And what's up, guys? I missed y'all. We had a week off, but we're back. We're doing another UFC Fight Night breakdown this week. They're going to Denver, so it's going to be a big crowd. It's going to be in the big cage, and there's some differences when you got that opposed to an Apex. So pretty decent Fight Night card. I think originally this card was really weak, but they've added some pretty nice fights recently, so I'm excited to see it. And one of the fights that's one of the newer fights on the card is actually the main event, which is going to be Rose Namajunas versus Tracy Cortez. So gonna break down this full fight night card of Namajunas versus Cortez. Give you guys my predictions and breakdown for every fight. Give you guys some betting advice. Parlay at the end of the video, so make sure you stay tuned and keep watching. And like always, man, hit the like button on the video. Last time, I feel like we did a really good job. So want to get more and more views, as many views as I can. So hit the like button. Let's try to get over 100 likes on this video. That would be awesome. And yeah, man, appreciate everyone listening to the channel. We've been doing pretty solid this year in terms of predictions, in terms of betting. So going to be looking to keep that going and only get better going on throughout the rest of the year. So make sure to go to patreon.com/prediction this week. There's a ton of events going on for MMA, and I am going to be doing a free trial this month. So go over there, check it out, sign up. You can join risk-free, get access to some of the best breakdowns, I believe, on the internet, and some of the best betting advice you can receive. So go check that out, patreon.com/MMAPredictionGuru. The link's going to be in the description. But besides that, man, let's get into this first fight of the night. Kicking off the card is going to be a good one, actually. It's going to be Montel Jackson versus Damon Blackshear in the 135-pound division, arguably the best weight class in the UFC. But pretty straightforward fight, in my opinion. Montel Jackson, dynamic striker. He's a problem for anyone on the feet with his length and his volume, but he's lost fights via getting wrestled. Damon Blackshear, he's a fine striker, but primarily a grappler, and this fight's going to come down to if Blackshear could take down or control Jackson against the cage. Jackson's not fought in over a year, and inactivity has kind of been a theme of his career, but he's on a 4-fight winning streak, and he also had a couple fights that got scrapped recently due to his opponents pulling out, so it isn't all his fault in terms of why he hasn't been fighting. And he was booked against some high-level guys, so obviously the UFC sees potential in Jackson. But Jackson's 32 years old at this point, so he can't keep taking so much time off in between fights. If he wants to make a run, it needs to be now. Damon Blackshear himself hasn't fought in almost a year, but he's fought 3 times in the UFC since the last time that Blackshear's fought. He actually had the quickest turnaround in UFC history for his last fight when he went in there against Mario Batista. Just 1 week after his previous fight that he did win. And it's a high-level matchup between these two guys. It's a good fight. Montel Jackson, you look at him in a couple of his fights, he got grinded out against Brett Johns. And he obviously has the height and reach over virtually anyone that he fights, but he isn't that evasive. I mean, he seems like he likes to plant his feet and throw those long punches with some sting on him. And he can let guys push him against the cage and score a few takedowns, kind of steal decisions. His cage wrestling looks bad, even though he has a wrestling background. But he obviously has a ton of potential, but he just isn't training at one of the highest level gyms, and I just don't know how much work he's doing cage wrestling or how much, clinch work he's doing in general. He did a good job of defending the single against Hani Yahya, but hard for me to really gauge much into that. Yaya's at the end of his career, but Montel Jackson's at his best, and what he wants to do in this fight is what he ended up doing to Yaya, and that's taking him out with the 1-2. Style-wise, Jackson, he's extremely fast and one of the longest bantamweights in the division. Like I said, he isn't the most mobile guy, but he uses a long-bladed stance. He'll snipe fighters with the 1-2s. He has sharp hands, good power. He'll go to the body, go to the head, and he can be high volume over 15 minutes. He has power as well because he's knocked down almost every opponent that he's faced, has really big hands. Isn't necessarily a guy with big killer instinct or finishing ability, though. It seems like when he hurts guys, he's not the best at closing the door, but he makes mistakes as well that can put him on his back, and he gives up the back mount. I feel like if he keeps this one standing, he's going to be doing really well, but if it goes to the ground, there's going to be some problems. Cardio for Jackson is a strong suit, though, and he does have good composure, so Blackshear has to be able to control him when he takes him down, or he could gas. But Damon Blackshear is decent. He has all-right striking, and he blends his takedowns well, keeps fighters off balance by mixing it up, and he could switch stances. He'd throw all right hand combinations, mostly single hooks, but when you get someone moving backwards, you'll throw some jabs in combination. He has okay kicks and mainly just uses the stand-up to distract until he can level change or clinch. And he will be at a speed disadvantage in this fight and will struggle if he can't get takedowns. I feel like Blackshear does a good job closing the distance, though, getting double underhooks or shooting singles and doubles. And his wrestling is solid. He also has a good submission game. He's a black belt. He has one of the few twister finishes in UFC history. So I think he will have an edge on the mat. And like I said at the outset, I think this fight could maybe come down to how much control Blackshear could have over Jackson. If he can't control him, we've seen Blackshear's cardio cost him in more than one fight in the UFC, and it could cost him again here. But I feel like, he looked good in his fight against Mario Batista, I thought, and Batista's a dark horse at 135. This fight's on short notice, but Blackshear looks like he's been grinding in Thailand, so hopefully he's in shape. And it's a fight where I think Blackshear is the superior all-around fighter. Montel Jackson may be faster. He has elite physical attributes. He could maybe use his size striking to win this one. But ultimately, I think if Blackshear comes in here and is on point, he'll be able to mix it up, use his ability to hit takedowns, push Jackson against the cage, and win a decision. So I'm going to Blackshear here to get the job done. For this next one, we got the first Colorado fighter on the card with Josh Fremd. He's fighting out of Factory X, and he's taking on Andre Petrosky, who was hot in the UFC at one point. He was 5-0, but now he's lost 2 fights in a row. And both these guys are kind of teetering a little bit. Josh Fremd 2-3, Petrosky 5-2, but on the 2-fight losing streak. His last fight was a really weird loss. Josh Fremd, he did have a 2-fight winning streak before his last fight in September and took a big step up competition against Roman Kopylov and got highlight reeled. Taking some time off, 2-3 in the UFC, so he needs a win here. And for Petrosky, back-to-back horrible outings where he got knocked out quick by Pereira and then shot in on a takedown, stunned himself, and got ended against Malkoun in a really bizarre finish. So Petrosky's durability is definitely a question moving forward, and if he gets knocked out again here, I wouldn't be shocked if the UFC parted ways with him. But Andre Petrosky's a high-level grappler, though. You got to give him that. He's strong, he's southpaw, he's physical for the weight class. Really good single leg, good clinch takedowns. He's a beast on top. And if he can get around the neck, he has a sick squeeze. He has a few choke finishes in the UFC. He's choke guys unconscious. And against higher level guys, he struggles to get the takedown because he just doesn't have that striking skill set. He's stiff, kind of short arms, and doesn't really feint or set his shots up well. He just kind of tries to lunge into range with big explosive shots. Footwork isn't really there. But his striking did seem leveled up a little bit in his last fight with Malkoun. I feel like he was moving better. He was trying to set up his counters and exploding. And he isn't a high-level striker, but he has dropped a couple people, and he has some power. But defensively, there isn't any head movement out of Petrosky, and he has gotten tired and gotten taken out. So, on top of recently his chin looking a little bit questionable. It's only been 3.5 months since that loss he had to Malkoun, so we'll see how he looks coming off of that. But Josh Fremd, his opponent, he's long and lanky. Kind of an average guy to me, though. On the feet, he has some feints he'll throw out there. Jab, check, hooks. He'll throw some 1-2s. We even throw a nice head kick. But he isn't that powerful. In this fight, if he could time a knee or a big shot, Petrosky, it seems like his chin is a little ripe. But Fremd is not a guy that usually is a huge knockout threat. And Fremd's also not that good at defending takedowns. I feel like he's a good scrambler, and he makes fighters work to hold him down. On top of scrambling into top position where he's pretty good, and he'll use his arms. He has long arms. He can get some chokes. But I feel like he gives his back to stand up, and I think Petrosky, if he can take him down early, is going to have a good chance to submit him. But cardio for Fremd is on point. And if he could survive some bad moments early, being in Denver at the elevation, that could be a big factor in the fight. Petrosky gets tired in general, but stylistically, I think this is a fight that favors Andre Petrosky. He should be way more physical and the better grappler, and I think he gets this one done in round 1 with a either a front choke or a rear naked choke. But it's hard to be confident in a guy who just knocked himself out by shooting in on a takedown. Fremd, like I said, isn't a big knockout guy, but he can maybe, get Petroski out of there if his chin is gone. But the fact that it's in Denver throws a little bit of a monkey wrench into it too. But I just think Petroski, if he has anything left, and is what he was when he was 5-0, he probably is going to go in there, take Fremd down early, and get that submission. Maybe it'll happen in the second, but I think it's going to happen in the first. And I'm going to go with Petroski via first round. And this next one, we got our first female fight on the card. And anytime Maria Agapova's fighting, I'm going to be tuning in. She is fun to watch, win or lose. She always puts on good fights out there. But Luana Santos, first fight of 2024, and she's already 2-0 in the UFC, so she did well last year, kind of getting her name out there. And coming back down to 125, she had the one fight at 135, and that was a little bit of a weird thing. People were kind of questioning what was up because she was a career 125er, came in 139, and didn't look like she was in the greatest shape. But she said she had a thyroid issue, which caused her to gain a lot of weight. And now I guess she has it back in order because she's back to 25, and she's never missed weight at 125. So if her body's right, I expect her to make weight just fine. Her first UFC fight and most of her career fights have been at 125, and she's never missed weight, like I said. So I think that this is a much different opponent than her first two UFC fights. She's going from fighting grapplers to a crazy striker, so she's the big favorite. Just based off, I feel like, how both girls' careers are going right now, but I feel like it's a good fight. And Maria Agapova making a return after not competing for almost 2 years. She's had a lot of problems, life problems, visa issues, and, just some of her interviews and just some of the things that come out about her, it definitely makes you question her mindset and not be as confident in her, maybe. But recently, she's looked decent when she's gotten in there and fought, and she's a dangerous fighter for anyone to face. She's gotten exposed a little bit in terms of having weak grappling, but she's been training more jiu-jitsu lately, it seems like. She had a jiu-jitsu match in May, ended really quickly where she got submitted with a leg lock, but at least she was preparing for something like that. Her last two fights, she's been submitted, so obviously that's what she needs to do, is get better on the ground, because she's hell on wheels to deal with, man, early in fights, 6 first-round finishes, and she's had other fights where she started well and then tired out and lost, and she won some fights that have gone later. She even got that third-round finish over Sabina Mazo, but when you wrestle her, she gets tired, and you can beat her down the stretch, Agapova. But on the feet in the first round, you have to figure out how to close the distance, and Agapova moves in and out of range really smoothly. She'll pull you into the 1-2s, 2-3s. She's throwing heat, trying to knock you out with every punch. And she's really good at rocking you and then jumping on a submission immediately, not giving you a chance to recover. On the feet, she is going to have the speed and power advantage. So ultimately, she has a good chance when it's standing. But she does tend to let herself get backed up, and she'll plant her feet and swing wild, overextend. Her last fight, she did look better on the ground, and she even created some scrambles and survived some bad positions against Jillian Robertson, who's looking really good. But Agapova still gives her back to stand up, and she makes silly mistakes, and she doesn't want to be on the ground in this fight. But she's a killer-be-killed fighter in general. She's had 14 fights. She's only been in 3 decisions. Her last 7 fights have all ended inside the distance, win or lose. And to me, Luana Santos, she has good athleticism, and she'll try to keep it technical on the feet, but I feel like her striking is not the greatest. But she has good judo. She could take you down with that and then control you on the ground, and she has some finishes from that scarf hold position. So this fight to me is going to come down to how locked in Agapova is in terms of being training and sharp and on point, in shape. Her last fight, like I said, I think she did a better job of getting back up, defending some bad positions. And on the feet, Santos is a bit hittable. But Santos, I think, is going to probably be able to clinch her against the cage, hit those clinch takedowns. And I just don't trust Agapova's cardio to be where it needs to be. So I think if she can't get her out of there like in the first half of the fight, Santos could take over and kind of submit a really tired Agapova. So I'm going to predict Luana Santos wins via second or third round submission. Man, and up next here we have an amazing fight. Charles Johnson versus Josh Van. And Joshua Van is hopefully going to get back in the cage, man. I mean, he had 4 fights already booked this year that haven't materialized. But it seems like this one's going to happen. And he's leapt on the UFC fans' radars. He was 3-0 last year to start his UFC career. And the UFC was on the train too. I mean, they booked him versus Ulanbekov. They booked him versus Tatsuro Taira. But those fights just didn't end up materializing. I mean, he had to make weight on June 15th versus Ulanbekov. And then Ulanbekov missed weight, so that fight didn't end up happening. And now 1 month later, Van's going to have to make that cut down again. So hopefully there's no ill effects from having a long training camp. Hopefully he didn't overtrain. Hopefully the 2 weight cuts aren't an issue. But 22 years old, Van's probably going to be ready to go. And Charles Johnson, since signing the UFC, has been one of the most active and fun to watch flyweights in the company. He's been up and down performance-wise. He's 4-4 in his 8 fights. But almost all of his fights have came against good competition, and he's been looking really good recently. He's won 2 fights in a row, and both of them have came in 2024. So he has some momentum. He's been staying active, and it seems like he has still title aspirations, and he's putting everything into his training, and he's going to be ready to go. I mean, he's 11 years older than his opponent here, so halting Van's momentum will be probably his most impressive UFC win to date if he could do it. And I think Johnson's going to be motivated and on point. So this is going to be a banger. Josh Van, elite striker. He brings insane pressure and throws really excellent punching combinations. He attacks the body, some of the best in the UFC even. And he throws crazy volume. He has okay head movement, but really he relies on his chin and his ability to just counter and trade in the pocket, his power. He doesn't have the greatest feints. He's not the most dynamic with his movement. He just walks you down like a Terminator, but tends to take a lot of damage early. And then once his opponents start to fade from all the pressure, the body shots, just him absorbing damage, staying in their face, that's where Van breaks him down with his offense and then takes him out with his combinations. This, to me, though, is going to be the best striker that Van has ever fought, and a guy that's rangy and long, and that's given Van some issues in previous fights. Josh Van has had a lot of adversity in his career in the UFC, even though he's gotten these wins. He's had, I believe, 3 first rounds and lost all 3. And if that's not true, he at least lost 2 of them, and a couple of them he got dropped, he got hurt bad. So, definitely is a slow starter, but if he can get out of that early going, he tends to take over and dominate. But Van, decent grappling for as fresh as he is. He hasn't been wrestling or grappling for long at all. He has aggressive jiu-jitsu. You could tell his scrambles are pretty good. But he's the type of fighter to get taken down. But when he gets up, he's pouring on the pressure immediately. He's looking to break you. And if he can get on top, he has heavy ground and pound. But I feel like his clinch game is going to be tested here. Devin Jackson easily took Van down in a clinch 3 years ago, and Van got fatigued. If Johnson can use his length to get Van to chase, he could then clinch and maybe get a couple takedowns, get to the back, land knees, land elbows, rack up some control time. And after Johnson does that, then maybe that could make the striking more competitive with Johnson slipping and ripping and staying at range. Because I think if it's just a pure stand-up fight, Josh Van's probably going to win that. But it will be competitive on the feet. And in that fight with Devin Jackson, I mean, you saw Josh Van get tired and quick tap in that fight. I know he was a teenager, and, he probably wasn't even grappling much at all at that point. I think he said he started wrestling 6 months before he joined the UFC, so I guess he was never wrestling before that fight with Devin Jackson. But just the fact that he quick tapped like that and gassed so hard, that just gives me a little bit of cause to pause, because it's like, that quick could be brought out of you again, and Van's a warrior. He's like a guy that's super tough, and when he can keep it stand up, his cardio is phenomenal. but that's just kind of sticking in the back of my head a little bit. But his opponent, Charles Johnson, super skilled, experienced veteran. He needs to bring all his tools for this fight. One thing that he has over basically everyone in the weight class is the size. He's a huge guy for 125. He's going to be 5 inches taller. And in this fight, I think he has to be aggressive early. He tends to start slow, but in this one, he can't back up and let Van get his rhythm. He needs to show Van it's going to be a full mixed martial arts fight. I think he has to try to pressure, clinch a lot. And if he can get it to the ground, I think he's going to have a big advantage. But using that wrestling in the clinch game, pushing the cardio, is going to help you in the striking as well. And if he can open up a striking, Charles Johnson has the power to potentially put Joshua Van's lights out. I mean, we've seen other guys knock him down and hurt him. And if Johnson has a little bit more pop than that, maybe Van will actually go out. But another thing with Johnson is he has amazing conditioning. I've never seen him really get tired in a fight or that tired. Obviously, if you fight at some of the crazy paces that he's had in certain fights, you're going to slow down a little bit. But his cardio is really good. And, I feel like if it's a full mixed martial arts fight, it's not just striking, Johnson will have the cardio edge. But both these fighters are going to kind of start slow. I believe whoever starts faster is going to win here. I think the fact that it's the bigger cage favors Johnson. If it was in the Apex, I think Van would have a lot better chance to win. But Johnson is a better fighter overall. On the feet, he has more weapons with the kicks. He's longer, and he can grapple and wrestle better than Josh Van. It's just going to come down if he can display all those weapons or if Van's pressure and his boxing drowns all of that out. But I'm going to slightly edge it to Charles. Van's amazing, but I think Charles is on a mission right now. He's older. He has to win, and I think he's going to use his experience to slightly edge it by using his wider MMA arsenal. It's going to be an amazing fight, though. I feel it's going to be closely contested and more than likely goes to decision. The line's off. I feel like it should be close to a pick'em, so I'm going to go with Charles Johnson and get the victory. And up next, we got another really fun fight with the debut of Fatima Klein, and she's taking on solid UFC fighter in Jasmine Jasudavicius. And if you're a fan of female MMA, if you're a fan of jiu-jitsu, you know who Fatima Klein is. She's one of the best prospects outside of the UFC currently. And it's a super interesting clash because she's taking on a 4-2 UFC veteran in Jasmine Jasudavicius. And it's a short notice fight. It's a bump up to 125. But she's already fought at 125 before. She was a 115, 125-pound champ at CFFC, which is a pretty big promotion. And she was scheduled to fight September 24th on Contender Series. And now she's getting right into UFC. She's 6-0. And she has a really high-level grappling pedigree. She trains with Aaron Blanchfield and a lot of the other sick grapplers in that NY scene, and she has excelled at every turn. Like I said, she won the CFFC title 115, 125. She did great in jiu-jitsu. And Jasudavicius, she has some solid wins over good fighters in her own right. She's coming off a dominant finish over Priscilla Cachoeira. She beat Miranda Maverick. And props to her for taking this fight because she was expecting to fight a top 10 fighter in Viviane Araújo. She's someone that is kind of on the close to getting ranked, and now she's taking on a really risky fight here in Fatima Klein. But Jasudavicius, really good grappler. In this fight, she's going to have her takedown defense on point, and that was on display versus Miranda Maverick. Her takedown defense was really good in that one, even versus Tracy Cortez as well. But Jasudavicius has an excellent sprawl, great ability to reverse takedowns and get on top. On the feet, she's constantly forward pressuring girls. She's throwing straight punches, and basically uses her length, cardio, and toughness on the feet to walk through her opponent's shots, land some power strikes, and eventually get on top. And her cardio is unrelenting. She's relentless as well, and overall is a difficult out. On the feet, she isn't great. Her offensive wrestling isn't going to win her this fight, I don't think, because I don't think she wants to grapple with Klein. So I feel like she's going to maybe try to use her size and push her against the fence, get Klein tired, and then put that pressure and volume on her. For Fatima Klein, she's a sick grappler. Her ability to time the body lock, work her way to the back is excellent. She has some of the best transitions and back control you're going to see in MMA fights smart. Her takedown defense is on point. She looks to stand up quickly when she's taken down as well. She doesn't play jiu-jitsu off her back, which I like to see. And she's also known for having really good leg locks. So if you do take her down and she does maybe show off a little bit something that she has off bottom, it could potentially be good. She could get a finish. But she hasn't really shown much off her back in MMA yet. Her stand-up is still developing, but her stand-up is definitely getting better. She's decent in and out with her footwork. She could switch stance. Her takedown ability and grappling obviously has fighters nervous to commit. And she'll throw okay kicks, some straight punches, left hooks. Her hands really aren't that bad when she can put her shots together. And did a really good job with the front kicks to the body in her last fight. Her footwork, her ability to cut off the cage is really good. She catches kicks well, gets on top. So if I'm Jasmine, I'm not kicking much in this fight. And in top position, Klein is methodical, very slick. She has great cardio, and she's gone 5 rounds before, so I think she's going to be ready to go here cardio-wise. She's coming in on short notice against a really good fighter, but I think Klein is faster. She's 23 years old. Her striking looks way better every fight. I think she's going to have superior stand-up. I think she could get some takedowns too, even though it's hard to take down Jasmine potentially in the clinch. And I think she takes away a lot from Judovicius. I think she takes away her kicks. She takes away her ability to take the fight to the ground. And Judovicius has to use her size and try to bully Klein. But I just think Klein's going to be able to do really well with the cage wrestling and be the superior striker at distance. And I also think that she's going to be the better grappler if it goes to the ground. She hasn't fought the highest level competition, but I just feel like she's ready for this one. And I'm going to Fatima Klein to win a decision. And this next fight, we got Abdul Razak Al Hassan taking on Cody Brundage. And kind of a battle of two flakes. I mean, Abdul Razak Al Hassan and Brundage have both shown some flashy finishes, but extremely inconsistent fighters overall. Brundage has 4 wins, 5 losses. Al Hassan is 6-6 in the UFC. So similar UFC records. And they've been able to finish low-level competition, but when they've been given steps up, they've taken the loss. Al Hassan lost a lot of his career due to those allegations, and now he's 38 years old, so he doesn't have a ton of time left. Has to rebuild after that loss to Joe Pyfer in October. And Piper's obviously a bad mother, so it isn't a bad loss. If you look at all of Al Hassan's losses, the worst guy he's lost to is probably Munir Lazez, and the majority of his losses were against top 15 opponents. Cody Brundage, he had a 2-fight winning streak going into his last fight against Bo Nickel, but kind of got dominated, submitted in the second round. Before that, he had a really big win where he got a knockout slam KO over Zach Reese, probably the best win in his UFC career. All 4 of the times that Brundage has gotten his hand raised in the UFC, they've been in the first round, and it seems like if he can't get the finish early, he falters mentally and just checks out of the fight. For Abdul Razak Al Hassan, super powerful guy, explosive, dangerous. 11 of his 12 wins are first-round finishes. And he brings methodical pressure on the feet. He slowly walks fighters down. He tries to cut the cage off. He'll land that power right hand. He has one-punch knockout power. And when he explodes and goes, it's dangerous. But he'll mainly only throw the rear overhand cross or lead hook. He did land a head kick on Chirico, but isn't a super big kicker. His calf kicks are okay. Al Hassan can't fight while moving backwards, really. All he tends to do is shell up and then try to time a wild counter. He was willing to sit in the pocket and exchange, and normally when fighters go that route against him, they get knocked out. He's durable. He's only been finished with strikes 1 time, but doesn't do a great job versus guys who are fast, who can close the distance quickly and be in and out. He's kind of heavy on his lead leg, so you can get leg kick him. But the majority of his losses have came against guys that have wrestled him. His wrestling has looked solid recently, though. In his fight with Joaquin Buckley, he was able to stand up pretty quickly the times he was taken down. He even reversed, got some judo trips. He controlled and won the 3rd round against Buckley with his wrestling and grappling. In his fight with Claudio Ribeiro, he controlled Ribeiro in the clinch for most of the first round. And even in his last fight, Pyfer eventually took him down and submitted him, but he did decent in the grappling exchanges in the early going. Cardio-wise, it seems like Al Hassan has gotten a little bit better at pacing himself, and his cardio is better at 185 than it was at 170. He also trains at Elevation fight team, so should be prepared for the Elevation. And Brundage isn't someone that's going to push a pace really, so I don't know if he's going to gas out if it goes longer. But Cody Brundage is a fighter who's talented, but not a great fighter under the lights, it seems. It looks like he has potential. You could see it in his movements that he's athletic, he has good footwork, he's powerful, he's fast, he's explosive. His wrestling is on point also. But he tries to get out of there as fast as possible, and will jump guillotines and go for these finishes that are really low percentage. And once he's on bottom, he just lays there. He doesn't try to get up. He's just trying to not take damage. He has a chance early against anyone on the feet to just catch them with something wild because he's explosive. But obviously that's not very likely. Hassan over 15 minutes is a better striker. He's more durable, composed. Brundage is faster, has more tools, but it doesn't really matter. Brundage, I don't see getting a quick submission here or just running over Hassan easily. His cardio, I don't think is bad. It's just he doesn't... if he doesn't get guys out of there early, he just goes into a defensive shell. And I think Brundage could get takedowns here, but I'm not sure he's going to be able to finish Hassan, and I doubt he can hold him down for 3 rounds. Eventually, he's going to make a mistake, end up on his back. And I think Hassan is the rightful favorite here. Brundage maybe one day shows up and finally fights his potential, or maybe Hassan comes in here looking old at 38. But I think Hassan's pressure going forward and ability to be more composed standing, along with get back up once he's taken down and even take down Brundage with some of his judo, will be able to find him the finish eventually, either whether he gets on top or he ends it standing. I think Hassan is going to get the win. I feel like he's going to have the cardio edge in terms of, maybe not even cardio edge, but I think he's going to do more as the fight goes on and have more outputs. And I'll say Hassan wins in round 2 or round 3 via finish. And moving on through the card here, we got Julian Erosa versus Christian Rodriguez in the next one here. And Christian Rodriguez has been a little bit of a thorn in the UFC side. He's beaten a lot of their prospects, but in fighting, that's what earns you respect. And the UFC initially, I think, weren't sold on Rodriguez because they gave him Raul Rosas Jr., they gave him Cameron Simon, they gave him, I believe, a couple other tough matchups. But he showed that you can never sleep on him. He took these decision wins over these guys, and now I think they're giving him a fight where they're trying to see where he's at. If he can get past a gatekeeper like Julian Erosa, especially with him only having one fight now at 145 where he got a questionable decision win over Isaac Dogarian. I think they kind of want to see where he's at 145, and Erosa's a good tester guy. He's still hanging around in the UFC and arguably saved his UFC career with that first-round submission win in March over Hamosh. And he's a rare breed in general, though. I mean, this is his 3rd stint in the UFC. He's a guy that's kill or be killed, and 6-4 in this recent run he's had with the promotion. He's fought really good guys. He's beaten really good guys like beat Sean Woodson, Nate Landwehr, Charles Jourdain, Hakeem Dawodu, Ricardo Hamosh. And historically, if you're beating Erosa, you're knocking him out. And if you can't finish him, he's usually taking you out late or taking that decision. So it's definitely an interesting fight with Rodriguez being more of a decisionator. And Rodriguez has looked really good in his last 4 fights. This is a totally different matchup, though, because you look at it, he was fighting a lot more grapplers. Now he's fighting a tall striker. I believe he's the tallest fighter that Rodriguez will have ever fought. And Rodriguez has to be ready to deal with pressure, wild stand-up, and kind of awkward style. And C-Rod's very fun to watch, though. He's super skilled everywhere. He's very composed on the feet. He throws very nice combinations, body head with his hands. He has some nice knees, elbows. More of a volume guy. He definitely isn't a very powerful striker. And defensively, he has good eyes, good distance control. His head movement is average, I would say, so sometimes shots can come through. And I do think that knee of Erosa is viable. But Rodriguez has a pretty good high guard. He blocks a lot of shots and is a high-volume guy. And his anti-grappling is elite. I mean, that's what's won him these fights in the UFC. Super slippery, hard to hold down, excellent cardio. He's been fighting nothing but fighters who've been looking to take him down, so his ability to beat that style has only gotten better. And he's beginning to implement his own takedowns into his game. He'll pressure fighters to the cage, level change. He has good trips as well, solid top control. And his ground and pound is pretty good. His pace is a weapon. So Erosa isn't going to be able to break Rodriguez with cardio like he has other guys. The question to me is if C-Rod has the power to hurt or keep Erosa off of him. I don't think Rodriguez wants to wrestle here just because Erosa has a dangerous guard and pretty good wrestling defense. Rodriguez is going to be the better boxer. He's going to be faster. If he picks and lands his shots well, he could knock out Erosa or point fight him to a decision win. But Erosa is a dog, and if it becomes a dog fight, then Erosa's going to have a chance. Whenever he steps in there, it's going to be a scrap with Julian Erosa, and he's going to walk down Rodriguez, try to use his size advantage, force exchanges. He's going to get wild, try to make it a high-paced dogfight. He's an awkward striker. He lands from weird angles. He's long, powerful, and if he could, force a bad shot, he could lock up a choke as well. His knees, his head kicks are pretty good, but his chin is a gigantic liability, and his defense is his offense, so he's going to get hit. His last 3 fights, he's been dropped. 2 of them, he's been stopped with strikes. And in 7 of his losses, he's been finished with via knockout. So Rodriguez is the smaller guy. He's coming up in weight and isn't known for power. So Erosa probably is going to feel confident he could take those shots. But you only need 1 clean shot to potentially put Erosa out. And Erosa is a great grappler. I don't know his jiu-jitsu rank, but he is a black belt as far as MMA jiu-jitsu goes to me. He has really sick front chokes. He's a really nasty guard. 13 submission wins, and he's never been submitted. So his grappling is legit. His cardio has been one of the best weapons, just like C-Rod. But I think this line's a little off because any fight where Erosa doesn't get knocked out will be a dogfight, and Rodriguez hasn't been pushed in that way that we've seen, really. But honestly, it's hard to trust Erosa, and I think that Christian Rodriguez is going to be faster, and I think he could find that finish. So I'll say he wins via KO TKO in the first round. And in the welterweight division, we have Gabriel Bonfim taking on Ange Losa. And Bonfim, he failed the Nicholas Dalby test in his most recent fight. Started fast like he always does, but Dalby didn't die like his other opponents and broke Bonfim and exhausted Bonfim, got finished in the second round. But prior to that, he was 2-0 in the UFC with 2 first-round finishes. He's going to be looking to get back to that. And he's facing a notoriously durable fighter who's never been finished. So it's a solid but winnable test for Bonfim. And Gabriel Bonfim's a big fighter for the weight class. He's ultra-athletic. He has well-rounded skills. His submissions are dangerous. On the feet, he has elite hand speed. His lead hand is good. Jab, check, hook are nice. His jabs are very fast, and he throws double, triple jabs. He's super aggressive. He'll march fighters down, throw a ton of offense. And for as pretty as his offense is, he's fairly one-dimensional. He only throws jabs, check, hooks, or 1-2s. Isn't a big kicker, and really relies heavily on his hand speed. He will pull away from punches with his chin high and then try to counter with the lead hook, jab, or big right hand. And if you can kind of close that gap and get inside and touch him when he's pulling back, you could hurt him. We've seen him get dropped before. And he's a guy that goes all out for the finish early. His pacing isn't really right for 15 minutes. All 15 of his wins are finishes, and he's only been to the third round twice. In one of those fights, it was only 3-minute round. So technically, he's only gotten 10 minutes or longer than 10 minutes in one fight. And he can mix it up. He's super aggressive, gets the clinch, hits some slams. He has really awesome front chokes. That's probably the most dangerous aspect of his game. Multiple guillotine wins. He's a Darce win. And he has several rear naked chokes. So 12 of his wins are submissions. And when he gets the job done, that's usually how it happens. For Ange Losa, he had a rough performance in his last fight. He got lucky to get out of there without a loss. He got eye-poked, kind of milked it, and ended up being a no contest. He had won 2 fights in a row prior to that, so he still has decent momentum, but kind of a crossroad fights for Losa. If he wins it, it opens up a lot of opportunities. But if he doesn't, he's going to be kind of in jeopardy of being cut if he loses another fight. But Losa's a solid fighter when he can go forward. He has good 1-2s, 3-2s. He can wrestle pretty decent. Good conditioning. He puts solid combos together. He's pretty defensively sound. He has a good high guard. He can be dangerous in the pocket. And he's mostly all hands like Bonfim. And I think in this fight, the speed and length edge is on Bonfim's side, but Losa has the cardio edge. If he could hang in there, the chance to finish could materialize eventually. And Losa has a good blast double. He's a strong fighter for the weight. He can hit slams. I don't think he has great grappling, though. And fighters threaten submissions, he tends to back out of there and get back up. And if he feels real danger in this one, I think that he's going to probably decide to just get back up and go back to striking. And I doubt he's going to want to really grapple much with Bonfim. Losa does have good cardio, but he could be really low volume and got kind of bullied his last fight by Brian Battle. So I don't know where he's at mentally. Whether we're going to see a motivated or deflated Losa, but Angelosa's a guy who I think has potential, but he's just too willing to let his opponents boss the fight. He'll just sit back, move a lot, and fighters pressure him, and he just looks to land these single shots. Unless he has a big speed advantage or the reach edge, it seems like he struggles to get off. And Bonfim, if anything, is high volume. He's long, fast. He's going to be in Luce's face. Luce is going to have to try to stay solid early and wait for his moment to connect with the big shot. But if he can't find that finish, I expect he gets finished himself for the first time or loses a decision on activity. And I'm going to say that Bonfim gets his jab going, forces a bad double leg shot out of Luce, and snatches that neck and gets a first round submission.
And continuing through the card, we got another awesome fight right here. Drew Dober versus Gene Silva. Dober getting a home game here, and he's going to be fighting in the state he's been training in for years. And he's an all-violence legend. He has the most knockouts in lightweight history. But he's in a prove-it stage of his career at this point again. For a long time, Dober was kind of just another guy in the UFC, but had that late career resurgence, made a big name for himself, and ended up fighting Islam, getting into some big fights, and then lost that one, built himself back up. And when he fought Matt Frevola last May, had he won that fight, he probably would have gotten a top 5 opponent, but that loss set him back pretty majorly. He got a quick comeback win over Ricky Glenn, but then lost again to Renato Moicano in February. So 35 years old now, 2 losses in the last 3 fights. Dober needs a win here, and they were setting him up with Mike Davis originally for the state, who's another good prospect, and now they're giving him Gene Silva. So it looks like the UFC is trying to build someone off of Dober's name, and Dober, with the win here, could get himself back in the mix. So overall, it's a good opportunity for both fighters. For Gene Silva, jumping back in the octagon just 2 weeks after his knockout win over Charles Jourdain, Silva has back-to-back knockouts to start his UFC career, and a win over Drew Dober on short notice will open up some doors for Silva. He's taking a risk here, though. He's had a difficult weight cut his last fight. He missed weight. Now he's moving up a weight class, coming back super quick. So it's tough circumstances, especially fighting a guy like Drew Dober, but then again, fighting a guy like Drew Dober makes it worth it. But Gene Silva is a tank. He's a knockout artist. On the feet, he's super explosive, dynamic, long, wide stance. He moves in and out quickly. He likes to pressure, feint, fake, and then close the gap with the 1-2s and pull counter. He has good head movement. His check hook is one of his money punches. He has dropped multiple fighters with that. He'll throw some kicks, some jump attacks. He's a really explosive guy. Tends to fight in bursts, though. He'll start a bit slow as well, but once he gets going, and he only needs to land 1 clean shot to end a fight. Pretty good defense, but you could time him sometimes. And I haven't seen a fighter be able to get inside on Silva either and make him pay by throwing extended combinations when he pulls back. But I feel like cutting the cage off with effective pressure, feinting, trying to open Silva up, and then countering would be smart, and that's something that Dober does really well. Silva's likely going to be faster, though, and his power is profound, so he could become the second guy in the UFC to knock Dober out if he wins. Has 10 knockout wins, and he's never been knocked out himself. And he's going to have to prove more once he fights a wrestler. His takedown defense looks a bit questionable, and we saw in his last fight with Charles Jourdain, he did get taken down a couple of times. But he hasn't been controlled in his fights from what I've seen. He has short-range power, so as you're trying to take him down in some of the scrambles, he can land a short uppercut or a punch and knock you out, which we saw him do versus Jourdain. And he trains at a really high-level grappling gym also, so he has to have good grappling. It does seem like he likes to attack guillotines. He has great cardio, and I would say he fights smart, but he's only 1-2 in decisions. It's kind of hard to read much into that, though, because both of his decision losses were over 6 years ago, and he easily won his decision versus Kevin Vallejos in 2023. Got better as the fight went on. So I think Silva, at short notice right after a previous fight where he had a bad weight cut. So I want to see Silva on the scales, see how he looks compared to Dober size-wise too. Dober's a shorter lightweight, so they'll be around the same height, but Silva's fight at 135, so Dober's definitely going to have a lot bigger frame. But Drew Dober is someone who's been around forever. We know how he fights at this point. He's an excellent striker. On the feet, he has really good footwork. He cuts the cage off really well. He keeps fighters on the back foot. In this fight, he will be allowed to go forward, but he just needs to stay sharp. He's really good at picking and pulling in the pocket. He has power, nice combinations behind the jab, 3-2s, 2-3s. He has a really similar style to Silva, except he's just more offensive. He's looking to pick and pull, but he creates more opportunities himself with feints, and he tries to be first more, whereas Silva counters a lot. And Dober attacks the body. His body kicks are vicious. He'll go high with head kicks too. And his durability is, legendary. So he could take a shot to give a shot. He does also do a little bit better job tucking his chin than Silva, I feel. And he's been in more wars, though. So if it's a chin-for-chin battle, it really could go either way. In the stand-up, it's going to be an amazing fight because I think it's going to be mostly in the pocket. And Drew Dober is the bigger guy. It may be smart for him to try to clinch and mix in some body locks. That isn't Dober's game, but if he could do it, he could score some points, maybe fatigue Silva a little bit. Usually when Dober loses, it's through being submitted or out-wrestled himself, so this matchup is a good one because Silva won't wrestle more than likely. And Dober always comes in amazing shape. His cardio is really good, and I think he's going to be motivated to get the job done here in front of his home crowd. And this fight's going to be great, and I think it could go either way. For Gene Silva, I do kind of think he's knockout or bust unless he can have big knockdowns. I just feel like Dober's going to be pressuring, controlling the center, the pace, probably be more active. I think Dober has more weapons. Both guys are super comfortable picking and pulling in the pocket, but I think Dober does a little bit better job at feigning and setting things up. But he's also more offensive and reckless, so Silva is going to have his opportunities, and Dober's going to be the fighter doing more. I think he has the power to knock out anyone himself, obviously, too. I kind of question Silva's cardio because I think it's difficult circumstances. If Dober puts that pressure on him, digs the body, eats some punches that maybe have made others get knocked out and stay in Silva's face, we could see Silva fade. I will say Dober also fought a similar opponent, probably not as solid and definitely not as good cardiovascularly, in Rafael Alves, and he was able to knock Alves out. So I'm going to predict that Dober gets the knockout late second. But if Silva catches him how Matt Favola did, I wouldn't be shocked either. It's kind of a pass for me betting-wise. I'm a little bit surprised to see the line be so close, though. And if Dober becomes an underdog, I could maybe be enticed on a bet on Dober. But for now, I'm just going to predict him to win via second-round knockout, and it's probably a pass.
And in the co-main event, we got two veteran strikers with Santiago Ponzinibbio taking on Muslim Salikov. And kind of an old man fight, but a fight that should be a banger. Ponzinibbio and Muslim are both members of the All Violence team, I would say, and both guys have been in the UFC a long time. They've had success, but recently they've been losing. Both have lost 3 of their last 4. They're no longer chasing the belt, but they could still put on some fun fights, and someone may be in jeopardy of losing their job on Saturday, so there's a lot on the line for both guys, though. And Ponzinibbio coming back 10 months after the knockout loss against Kevin Holland, and in general, he's been inactive. His last win was in 2022, and he's still a beast skills-wise. He's fast, he's athletic, his feints are really good, nasty jab, good job attacking the body, good 1-2s, nice counter hook. His low kicks are nice, head movement is good, slips and rips in the pocket, good cardio, brings the volume. But the big issue with Ponzi at this point is his durability. His chin is almost dust at this point, and if you can clip him clean, you can knock him out. I mean, we saw Kevin Holland drop him with like a bitch slap in their last fight, where he hit him with he was up on one leg and he hit him with a back fist from a foot away and dropped him. It was kind of crazy. So Ponzinibbio's chin is very questionable to me, but he still has good skills and he has good wrestling defense. He isn't worried about shooting takedowns or wrestling offensively. And this fight's almost certainly going to be a stand-up fight. If anyone looks for takedowns, I think it will be Salikov, but historically, not many have succeeded in taking down Santiago, and Ponzi's always going to fight with heart. He's going to go hard, so it's going to be a great fight. And Muslim, he's an excellent striker, still very solid technically. He looks fast. He was winning this fight with Randy Brown before he got clipped, I feel like. And he's a fighter who could fight off the front or back foot, but more of a counter striker. Ton of experience fighting in striking matches, so his distance control, his composure are really good. As he's getting older, he's getting more hittable, but he still has solid defense. He has great movement, fakes, feints, and is always looking to slip and rip off the back foot. He'll use kicks and some stutter step feints to try to open up blitz attacks. He throws nice tight hooks, really powerful overhand right. On the inside, he's really fast, sharp with his uppercuts, short hooks. He loves to sit in the pocket and just go to war. And he could also pressure, feint, draw out offense, and then throw himself. He was pressuring Randy Brown, landing low kicks before he rated that nasty 1-2 that knocked him out. And obviously his spinning attacks are what he's known for. He has some of the fastest spinning kicks and spinning back fists in the UFC.
when he's going forward and gets the timing on those kicks, it usually spells big trouble for his opponents. And for many years, he was notoriously durable, but recently that's kind of changed. Li Jingliang became the first guy to knock Salikov out in 2022. Nicholas Dalby dropped him in their fight in 2023, and then Randy Brown just brutally knocked him out in his most recent fight in February. So he only took 5 months off to recover. Not a lot of time. And Ponzinibbio definitely has the power to turn out someone's lights, but so does Salikov, and Ponzinibbio's going to be pressuring, giving opportunities for counters. And this fight's going to be a battle of volume and pace versus power. Really, Salikov has the timing, precision, and power to land a clean counter punch or kick and knock Ponzi out. But if he can't find that shot, he's likely going to get tired, and Ponzi will finish him down the stretch or win a decision. This fight to me is kind of a dog or pass on the money line. Ponzinibbio's chin cannot be trusted at juice against a polished striker with power. Salikov is 40 though, and he just has not had great performances on top of coming back really quick from a knockout loss. If this fight goes longer, I think Ponzinibbio's cardio is going to shine through. But I'm going to predict Muslim wins via second round knockout. I just don't trust Ponzi's chin. I think Muslim is good at finding knockout punches, and he's going to be able to catch Santiago and take him out.
And finally, in the main event, we got two top 15 ranked flyweights going at it with Rose Namajunas and Tracy Cortez. Semi-short notice matchup. Rose Namajunas, former two-time UFC 115-pound champ, undefeated upstart Tracy Cortez. So good matchup, but Namajunas originally was expected to fight Macy Barber, so switch up for her, but Tracy Cortez was getting ready for a way different opponent, Miranda Maverick, in a 3-round fight. So I think it's a way bigger switch up for Cortez. But Cortez was going to fight just 1 week later. So she did have a pretty good camp, pretty long camp. And Namajunas obviously got that camp in that she was getting ready for Barber for. And Rose got back to her winning ways earlier this year versus Amanda Hebos. But some people felt Rose lost that fight. And there's still some doubters regarding her fighting at 125. This win for Rose would kind of cement her as one of the top 125ers in the world. For Tracy Cortez, it's the exact fight she's been looking for. Cortez, you'd think, would be much younger than Rose, but she's already 30, and she's just been kind of inactive in the UFC. She signed in 2019. She hasn't fought more than one time in the same year since she's been signed. This is her first fight in 10 months, and I think it's smart she's jumping on this opportunity. It's obviously coming sooner than expected, as it's a huge step up from Miranda Maverick, but Cortez is 5-0 in the UFC, and I'm sure she feels ready. Cortez has been working and getting better during her layoffs in the gym. She has a big following and I think generates a lot of income outside of fighting, so she doesn't have to accept fights when she isn't prepared, and she could take time off from competing, not worry about having to make money or where the money's coming from, and grind in the gym and get better. So that partially is probably the reason why she's taking layoffs as well. But now that you're fighting a girl like Rose, winning this fight, you could turn it around and get a huge fight next. So hopefully she decides to be a little bit more active. And I'm sure Cortez is super familiar with Rose's style as well, not only from just watching her over the years, but also because Weili Zhang trained at Fight Ready for one or maybe even both of her title fights versus Rose. So obviously that whole camp has a history with Rose Namajunas. But if you look at Tracy Cortez's career, this is going to be a completely different fighter than she's ever been in there with. All 5 of her UFC opponents have been wrestling, grappling-centric, kind of subpar strikers. Even if you go back prior to her UFC days, she's only really fought 2 girls who are known strikers, Maria Agapova, Caitlin Neal. Neither of those girls are being mistaken for having the talent of Rose. And she fought Justine Kish and got knocked down in that fight in the 3rd round. And Kish is like Muay Thai champ or something, but her striking is kind of not the best, I don't feel like. But Cortez has definitely improved her striking quite a bit. But this is going to be the test to show how good her striking really is. Her hands look fast and crisp for Jasudavicius. And she's quick, she's light on her feet. Her opponents know that she wants a takedown, so it does open up her hands. And she'll throw fast 1-2s, 3-2s, 2-3s. She's alright leg kicks, body kicks. And she's a mean streak about her. She's tough. She'll sit in the pocket, exchange shots. And she doesn't feint very well. She doesn't really provide any trickiness closing the gap. Sometimes she'll fake level changes, come over the top with big punches, but
just isn't that slick, and I feel like Rose is going to be able to manipulate distance and land on her and be kind of a ghost in there with her footwork potentially. But Tracy, her cardio is good, and if she could push hard, eventually start to mix in the takedowns, get those level changes, get on top, that's what she's going to want to do. Cortez is a very good wrestler. She's going to be bigger, more physical. She has good cage wrestling. She'll use those trips like Henry Cejudo. Her last fight, she got out-wrestled by Judah Vicious, and I've seen other fights where Cortez struggled to get her wrestling going too, so I do think her wrestling is a little overrated. And once Cortez is on top, she has good ground and pound. She has good top control. I feel like the jiu-jitsu of Rose could potentially give her some issues, but Cortez is good too. When girls try to get up, she'll go to the front headlock, she'll circle to the back and kind of use that wrestling right position and just grind you out and beat you that way. She used to fight at 135, so she has a little bit of size for this weight. She's heavy. But I feel like Rose's grappling is underrated, man. I mean, she had a couple of those bad performances versus Carla, and that's kind of been one of her kryptonites, but you look at her last fight with the Manny Hibas, I mean, that's another very good grappler, and Rose got up, but she got taken down really quick. She was able to reverse, get on top. You watch her fights with Weili Zhang, same camp as Tracy, got kind of similar takedowns on Rose that Tracy's going to go for, but Rose, once again in that fight, got back up to her feet, got takedowns of her own, and won the decision in the second fight. So I feel like Rose's grappling gets underestimated, and maybe Tracy's a little overrated. So, that's kind of what I see in this matchup in certain aspects. But on the feet, Rose is clearly better. Great distance management. Her ability to move in and out and kind of just feign and create openings, cut angles is elite. One of the best in the sport to do that for females. Great jab. Throws decent hand combinations, but she doesn't really put a lot of volume out there against wrestlers a lot of the time and kind of tries to sting from the outside. Obviously, her head kick is legendary. She got it on Zhang and knocked her out with it, and she has a couple quick knockout wins, so she's dynamic. Her submission game is on point, too. And I just feel like she has too much experience, man, and she's too good everywhere for Cortez. Cortez doesn't have good head movement. She doesn't really have finesse striking. I feel like Rose can light her up on the feet. And even if Rose is limited with volume because she's worried about the takedown, I just don't think that Cortez, is going to offer too much either on the feet. And it'll be Rose kind of winning by default by landing a little bit more shots. And I just don't see Tracy going in there and out wrestling and laying on Rose and winning over 5 rounds like that. Tracy isn't a finisher. If you look at all her wins, they're mostly decisions. And for her to go in there and just lay on Rose for 5 rounds, I think that's going to be really tough, especially with Rose, I think likely having the better grappling, being able to get back up to her feet when Cortez takes her down. Cortez not training for 5 rounds, not training for someone that's a great striker, training for a southpaw, not training for someone that's going to be, used to fighting 5 rounds when you're not. I think there's a lot of things that Rose is going to have advantage on fight night with. And that's without even talking about the elevation factor and the fact that Rose is fighting at home. So I honestly could see Rose knocking Tracy out in this one. But Tracy's someone that has great cardio, and I feel like she has grit and is going to be really hungry for this opportunity. So I think she probably could survive, go all 5. And I'll predict that Cortez loses a decision here and Rose Namajunas is victorious. So give me Rose Namajunas in the main event. I'll say she takes a decision win over Cortez. And I think that the line is fairly accurate. So I don't see a lot of value on Rose, but I do think she's going to get the job done. So there you have it, guys. It's full card breakdown and predictions for UFC Denver. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you learned something from the video. As far as the parlay of the week, my most confident pick, a lot of these fights are pretty closely contested on this card. But I guess I'll say Christian Rodriguez would be my most confident pick on the card. I'll go with Gabriel Bonfim. And as far as my parlay of the week, I'll go with Christian Rodriguez and Gabriel Bonfim. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll be back soon doing another breakdown prediction video. Like I said at the beginning of this video, let's try to get 100 likes on this. I would really appreciate it. Patreon.com/prediction guru is where you're going to get access to a lot more content, to some bets, so definitely go over there and check it out. And share the video, man. Comment down below. I really appreciate all the interaction. Hopefully we can get some more views on this one. And I'll talk to you guys soon.